This time we're looking at sentence structure, or as the grammar book puts it, parts of a clause. The book says that every clause or sentence is made up of a number of different parts, and that each of these parts may be a single word or a group of words. And the parts include the subject, the verb, the object, the complement, and the adverbial. We're not going to worry too much this time about the difference between clauses and sentences. That's something we'll be looking at next week and the week after. We'll be applying the terms on the screen, subject, verb, object, complement and adverbial, to some example sentences to make sense of the difference. The grammar book also says that few clauses or sentences contain all of these parts, but that most contain a subject and a verb. All of the sentences we'll be looking at contain a subject and a verb, and what we'll really be trying to do is see the difference between objects, complements and adverbials. Okay, so every sentence is made up of a number of different parts: the subject, the verb, the object, the complement and the adverbial. Not always all of these parts, but usually a subject and a verb. What we'll do, we'll take sentences from last week when we were doing tenses for a context that allows us to draw a distinction between the meaning of the sentences we're looking at and the grammatical purpose of the parts of the sentence or parts of a clause. Okay, so we'll watch the video again just to refresh our memories so that when we're looking at the examples we know what they're referring to. Okay, so here's Stan and Ollie.
What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?
But if I want fuzz, I would like to lick. The joke.
No, you tell her. You tell her.
Oh, I give it
That wasn't liquor, that was cold tea.
Okay, so every clause or sentence is made up of a number of different parts: the subject, the verb, the object, the complement, and the adverbial. Again, not always all of these parts, but usually a subject and a verb. We'll be looking at 7 example sentences, and I'll put the number of the example in that red circle at the top left-hand corner of the screen. And we'll start in each case with the verb. So example number 1, the verb is have finished. Well, we could say that this is a verb phrase rather than a verb. We'll say verb for short, but this is a phrase. It's got 2 words in it, have finished. And we'll remember, I think, that finished is the main verb in this. It conveys the information, the meaning. Whereas have is, do you remember the term for the verb have? This is an auxiliary verb, or a help verb, and it helps to make the tense. Tense here is present perfect. If you don't remember the names of tenses, don't worry about that. Now the subject of the sentence in this case is Stan and Ollie. Notice that there are 2 people, Stan and Ollie, but 1 subject. The word subject refers to the phrase in blue here. It doesn't refer to the people, but actually the part of the sentence or part of the clause. Stan and Ollie have finished. Now the verb finished is a word that expresses an action, not being, not having, but doing. Expresses an action, and we can think of the subject, in this case at least, as the actor. We've got the action, finished, we've got the actor. Stan and Ollie have finished what? What have they finished? They've finished the whole bottle. Now what is this part of the sentence or clause? What's this part of the sentence? Okay, the box at the bottom is a way of answering this question, gives us a way of answering. Look at 1 and 2. Number 1, can we ask a question beginning with who or what that gives us the phrase in black, the whole bottle, as the answer? If not, then we should ask what part of the sentence the phrase in black goes with. Now in this case, we can ask a question beginning with what that gives the whole bottle as the answer. I already asked it, in fact. I asked, what have Stan and Ollie finished? The whole bottle. Now if you can ask a question like this, you know that the bit at the end is the object. Another way of thinking about this is to say that Stan and Ollie are the actors, finished is the action, and the whole bottle is the thing acted on. So if I say Stan and Ollie kicked a cat, a horrible example I know, Stan and Ollie kicked a cat, we've got the kicking, which is the action, we've got Stan and Ollie, which are the actors here, and we've got the cat, which is the thing acted upon. When we look at some more examples, that will become clear, I think, through contrast. So let's go on to number 2. The verb phrase, the verb is are getting, and the subject here is the other people. Notice there's more than one person, but there is just one subject, and that is the phrase the other people. Okay, now let's say I ask a question like this. What are the other people getting? Now think back to the video, think back to the scene we saw, and try and imagine what the answer is going to be, because I think the sentence will be a bit surprising. What are the other people getting? Annoyed. Now I'm assuming that that's a slightly surprising answer, because you probably thought of the word getting as equivalent in meaning to, say, acquiring. What are they acquiring? Now you could say they're getting some drinks from the bar or something like that. That's not really what getting means in this sentence. So although I can form a question with what are the other people getting, when we look at the whole sentence we see that that's not quite right. That misses the meaning of the sentence. So we go on to the next one and ask, what part of the sentence does annoyed go with? Now annoyed, if we talk about word classes, it's not a noun, it's not a verb. What kind of word is annoyed? Annoyed is an adjective, and it describes the other people. And that makes it a compliment. A compliment is a word that gives, in this sentence, it gives extra information about the subject. Now the contrast here is between the subject and the verb. It doesn't give extra information about the verb, it gives extra information about the subject. Okay, let's go on to the next example, again for contrast that will help us understand what we've got so far. Remember always that the more you get, the more examples you look at through contrast, the more that will make sense. So sometimes you have to leave an example behind when it's still not completely clear to get some more examples that help make sense of it. Number 3, started drinking. What's the subject? Stan and Ollie. Again, 2 people, Stan and Ollie, but 1 subject. The subject is the phrase, Stan and Ollie. So I can ask here, what did Stan and Ollie start drinking? Again, think back to the video and try and guess what the answer is going to be. I think you're going to be a bit surprised in this case too, but what did Stan and Ollie start drinking? A few hours ago. That's a bit of a strange answer to the question, what did they start drinking? Actually, to get a few hours ago as an answer, you'd have to ask the question, when did Stan and Ollie start drinking? Not what, but when. So in this case, we can't ask a question beginning with who or what that gives a few hours ago as the answer. We can ask a question with who that goes like this: who started drinking a few hours ago? But the answer to that question is Stan and Ollie. We can ask, what did Stan and Ollie start doing a few hours ago? But the answer to that question is drinking. So we can't ask a question with who or what that gives us a few hours ago as the answer. So, what part of the sentence does a few hours ago go with? Now, unlike the last example, annoyed, the other people are getting annoyed, a few hours ago isn't like an adjective. It doesn't describe Stan and Ollie. Actually, it goes with the verb, and that makes it an adverbial. When did they start drinking? Someone started drinking. Forget who started drinking. There was a starting of drinking. Sounds strange to talk like that, but drinking started. That's what we're interested in, the starting of the drinking. And to get extra information about the starting of the drinking, we can ask when. When was the starting of the drinking? Well, it was a few hours ago. We're not thinking about Stan and Ollie at all when we're thinking about that black phrase at the end. Okay, let's go on to another example. Now this one will be a bit tricky, and I'm going to introduce a distinction here which isn't in the list of terms at the very beginning, but it extends the list a little bit. We've got the verb, which is showed. We've got the subject, which is they. Notice here that the subject is referring to just one word, they. And do you remember the name of the word class that they belongs to? Remember, they is a word which takes the place of some other noun or noun phrase in this case. They is Stan and Ollie, so the word they is a pronoun. So, they showed. What did they show? Here I'm asking a question with what. What did they show? They showed the empty bottle. Now I have been able to ask a question beginning with what that gives the empty bottle as an answer. What did they show? The empty bottle. but I think you'll feel that the question is a bit weird and there's something missing in the middle. Now I'll just say here that this isn't a direct object and that there's something in the middle that we need to complete this sentence to make it feel full. So what goes in the middle? They showed the empty bottle. What goes in the middle? What do you think? Well, the sentence I've got is, they showed the woman the empty bottle. Now I'm just going to say here, without any explanation, we can talk about this together if we need to, that the woman is an indirect object. Here we have a verb that has two objects, the woman and the empty bottle. Now there are other verbs like this that we'll see in some later examples. And if you think about the sentence here, the woman, the phrase the woman, doesn't give extra information about the verb showed or the subject they, nor does the phrase the empty bottle. These are sort of self-standing bits of the sentence. Now notice this, if we change the order of this sentence a little bit and we say they showed the empty bottle, they showed the empty bottle the woman, we need something else here, something missing in the gap. What do you think? They showed the empty bottle the woman. What goes there? Well, the word to may come to mind immediately. I think it probably might have done. They showed the empty bottle to the woman. So see here that we've changed the order. We've put the direct object immediately after showed, and then we've got the indirect object at the end. Very often you can make this switch and you need the preposition to, sometimes for, to go. You need that to go before the indirect object to make the sentence sound complete. Okay, I won't say more than that now. As I've said, if we need to talk about that when we're together, we can. I'll go on to the next example. The verb is haven't seen, phrase haven't seen. We've got the main verb see in the past participle seen. We've got the auxiliary verb haven't, which helps us make the present perfect tense. Okay, that's what we did last time. The subject here, again we've got they, just one word. They haven't seen, well they is Stan and Ollie, so they is a pronoun. They haven't seen. Okay, so I can ask, what haven't they seen? What haven't they seen? What do you think the answer is? What haven't they seen? The woman. Well, hang on, what isn't right for this? The woman isn't an object, it's a person, so we should ask, who haven't they seen? So we can ask a question beginning with who that gives us the woman as the answer. So the woman is the object. Well, hang on, I said a second ago that the woman isn't an object. Well, in the sense that a table is an object or some other just inanimate thing is an object. Well, that's not the grammatical use of the word object. That's the general use. When we're talking about an object here, we're not talking about necessarily a thing. It's the grammatical sense of that term that I'm using. So the woman is an object, but not a thing, in the ordinary sense. She's a grammatical object. So the phrase, the woman is the object. We know that because we can ask a question beginning with who that gives the woman as the answer. Who haven't they seen? The woman. Who haven't they seen yet? The woman. Okay, so we've got the object there, but there's something left here. We've got yet. Now we can't ask a question beginning with who or what that gives us yet as the answer. You can pause the video and try it, but you won't be able to do it. So we go on to the second question. We ask, what part of the sentence does yet go with? Now in this case it's really good to think back to the scene in the video. Remember what happened. Stan and Ollie, they're sitting at the table drinking. The woman comes in. She sits behind them at the table. We've seen her. We're aware that Stan and Ollie are going to get a surprise when they see her. She's very angry, and we're waiting. The tension builds up, the suspense. So we can see they haven't seen her yet. Haven't seen, we've got this feeling of time passing. The time is passing, the tension is building. Now, yet isn't describing the subject, and it isn't describing the object. It's describing the seeing. The seeing hasn't happened yet. So this is, again, an adverbial. Now, the thing about adverbials is that they don't always go at the end of the sentence like this, and I'll give you some similar sentences with different adverbials, but more or less the same meaning, which illustrate this. Have a look at the next one. Haven't seen, verb. They haven't seen. Notice it hasn't got a capital letter at the beginning. They haven't seen the woman. Well, that's the object. It goes at the end in this case, but what goes at the beginning of this sentence? Can you think of something, a phrase or word that can go at the beginning which has a similar meaning to yet? This is my idea. So far, they haven't seen the woman. So far isn't quite right, but it's similar in meaning to yet. Notice it goes at the beginning, so we've got adverbial, subject, verb, object. Or, haven't seen, they haven't seen the woman. There's something that goes between the subject and the verb phrase. Can you think of something that can go there? This is my idea. They still haven't seen the woman. So we've got here the subject and then the adverbial and then the verb and then the object. Now it can be useful when we're writing to have to be aware that the adverbial can change place like this, that we can choose adverbials to go in different parts of the sentence, because it helps us put the emphasis on the information we want to and get the flow of the text right. But for the moment, let's just notice that the adverbial can go in different places. Okay, the next example. Didn't find. The woman didn't find. So, what didn't the woman find? Imagine an answer to this question. What didn't the woman find? Now, the sentence may sound a bit odd as an answer to that question, and perhaps I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, because earlier I was saying that the question, what didn't the woman find, if the answer sounds a bit strange, and we should go on to number 2. But in this case, I'm going to say that we can ask the question, what didn't the woman find, and answer the situation. What didn't she find very funny? The situation. I hope that sounds not too strange. What didn't the woman find very funny? The situation. So that makes it an object. I'm going to just skip over any strangeness there and go on to the next bit. Now we can't ask a question with very funny with who or what. We can't ask a question with who or what to give us very funny as an answer. So we ask, what part of the sentence does it go with? Now, I don't think it goes with a verb here. I don't think you'll think it goes with the verb here. It doesn't go with the woman either. Actually, it's the situation she didn't find very funny. So this is a complement too. The contrast here, though, is between the object and the verb. If you look back at the earlier example with annoyed, the other people are getting annoyed, there was a contrast between the verb and the subject. What part of the sentence does it go with, the verb or the subject? In this case, it doesn't go with the verb, it goes with the object. It doesn't go with the subject, it goes with the object. So there's a contrast here to be made between those parts. But think of the complement as being a bit which it's not an object and it doesn't go with the verb. It goes either with the subject or the object, depending on the sentence. Okay, let's look at the next example. Stan and Ollie started drinking a few hours ago. Well, actually, this isn't the next example. This is the first one we looked at, but there's a feature of this that we should point out. Now, I'll say here as a kind of warning that when you're analysing sentences, even apparently simple sentences, the analysis can go on and on and on and on, depending on how much detail you want to produce. Now, let's have a look. What we've got here, I mean, if I start like this, how many verbs are there in this sentence? How many verbs? Well, there are 2 verbs, aren't there? Started drinking. And I'm going to ask now, what kind of a verb is start? We talked about this, and it begins with C. Do you remember? It's a very funny kind of verb and a special term for this. Started drinking. It's not an auxiliary verb, but it does go together with another verb. It does do something here. It's a catenative verb. Now, this means that the analysis is going to be a bit trickier if we want to get into this much detail. Look, let me draw a line down here. Oops, I'll go back. I missed a bit. Started goes with the verb drinking here. And what we can ask is, what's this? What are we going to make of this word drinking in this part of the sentence? So hang on, let me put that line back down. If I say Stan and Ollie started the car, and I ask, what's this? What's the car? I can ask, what did they start the car? That means the car is the object. Now, what other kinds of thing can we start? We can say Stan and Ollie started an argument. We can say that Stan and Ollie started their evening. They started their evening at 6 o'clock, for example. And we can also say that Stan and Ollie started drinking. Now, in this case, we'd think of the word drinking as the object. If you look in the grammar book, that's what it says. The verb that goes with the catenative verb is an object. So when we look at the sentence at the bottom of the list there, they started drinking the booze, we may want to say that the verb drinking is the object for started. What did they start drinking? But we can also ask, what is the booze in this sentence? Now have a look at this. Stan and Ollie drank the booze. I can ask, what did Stan and Ollie drink? The answer is the booze. And that makes the booze the object of this sentence. So the booze is an object for the verb drink. Now, if we look at this sentence, Stan and Ollie started drinking the booze, we can say that the phrase started drinking is the verb phrase. We're not thinking of drinking as the object anymore. We're thinking of started drinking as the verb phrase and the booze as the object of the sentence. So this is a bit confusing, right? And that was the sentence we looked at. Stan and Ollie started drinking a few hours ago, and what we asked was, what's this? A few hours ago. And we said that it's the adverbial, because it goes with started drinking. It tells us more about the starting of the drinking. When did the starting of the drinking start? That kind of thing. We're not worried about Stan and Ollie, we're worried about the thing, the action, the activity. So here we're thinking of started drinking as the verb phrase. But whether you think of drinking as part of the verb phrase or whether you think of drinking, the word drinking, as the object, this depends on how much detail you want to go into with your analysis. Now, how much detail should you go into with your analysis? Well, that will all depend on why you're doing the analysis in the first place. And if you're sitting down writing an email or an essay or something like this, and you're worried about a bit of the sentence, you don't know whether it should go at the end or at the beginning or whatever it is, or if you should rewrite the sentence in a certain way, Then how much detail you get into depends on what your practical problem is. If you're studying linguistics at university and your task is to analyse a sentence in complete detail right down to the last word, then you'll have to go into as much detail as we've just gone into, and even more. Because any time there are two words or more together, like Stan and Ollie, or like a few hours ago, there's a grammatical story to tell about how the words are combined. Very often, though, you do not need that story. You just need a little bit of analysis for whatever practical problem you've got. So I've looked at number 7 in this much detail just to illustrate the point that how much analysis we need depends on our practical purposes, and there's always more, it seems, that can be said about the sentence. Even a simple sentence, there's always more to be said about it than we've said, it seems. Okay, so this is what we've just done. We've looked at 7 examples, 6 examples. We looked at one twice in more detail the second time. But we looked at 7 examples and applied the terms subject, verb, object, complement and adverbial. What you should do now to get ready for the next time we meet is analyse, in however much detail you want, sentences A to N. I'd suggest that you don't go into too much detail, don't worry too much about every last bit of the sentence. See if you want to in some cases, but the main thing is in each case to have applied the terms at least once. I mean, to apply at least a couple of the terms. You'll find a subject and a verb in each case, but what you have to decide is whether what's left after you've got the subject and the verb is the object, the adverbial, or the complement. Sometimes there may be 2 objects, a direct and an indirect object. Sometimes there may be an object and an adverbial. Maybe an object and a complement, maybe just a complement, maybe just an adverbial. That's really what you have to decide.